Hi, Vince Williamson from Sandgroper Videography, and we have just returned from an amazing trip through the centre of Australia, some 14,000 k's over 3 months. We covered some of the most rugged and some of the most beautiful countryside that you would ever hope to see, and virtually without serious incident. When planning a trip like this, there were a heap of accessories that I knew that I was going to need. Lots of choices: bull bars, winches, long-range tanks, the list went on. But without a doubt, the most important decision that I made was to go and visit the team at Ultimate Suspension. I've got to say, without their advice and expertise, we could have just been another statistic. We could have just been another vehicle that succumbed to the rigours of that harsh outback travel. While the Kimberley and the Tanami and the Mitchell Plateau took its toll on a lot of our accessories, it actually wasn't until we hit the Simpson Desert and its multitude of giant sand dunes that I really started to appreciate the benefit of the work that Ultimate Suspension had done on our vehicle. My mate Steve had opted for a different brand of suspension, and while my Hilux cruised up the challenging sand dunes, he continually had to back up and try again. While there's no shame in having to back up and have another go at a sand dune, the stress from the incorrect suspension kit on the vehicle was obvious. There was a whole heap of force being transferred through the suspension and into the body, into the frame, rather than being taken up by the suspension. Steve's biggest disappointment was not being able to overcome Big Red. There's lots of big dunes out there in the desert, 1,100 sand dunes in fact, but Big Red is the one that you want to say that you've done, and Steve was very disappointed that he wasn't able to do that. In fact, he had to take an alternative route and go around the face of Big Red. Disappointment is one thing, but Steve was very fortunate not to have caused really serious structural damage to his vehicle. When the suspension isn't handling the terrain, then the shock is being transferred to the chassis, and that's when real trouble can occur. Steve wasn't the only one to misjudge the importance of suspension. Here's a shot of another vehicle that was limping back home after a seriously bent chassis. The team at Ultimate Suspension have a fabulous service. After a major trip like this, you can take your vehicle back to them and they will put it up on the hoist and they'll check out the suspension. They'll check the shockies, they'll check everything to ensure that the suspension is operating the way that it should, and that there's been no stress, no damage to the vehicle. It's a wonderful service, and a couple of days ago I headed back down to Minto to speak to Ken O'Keefe, the founder of Ultimate Suspension, to take him up on that free check, but also to ask him some questions so that I could fill out my knowledge on the importance of suspension, and to be able to advise my mates like Steve and others that really this is the number one, the very first accessory that you add to your vehicle if you're going to undertake a trip into it. And it looks like the vehicle's handled the trip pretty well, so thanks for that check. When a vehicle comes with suspension, you know, when you buy your vehicle it's got suspension, why should people really consider coming to somebody like you to have some adjustments made to their suspension?
Okay, firstly you have to understand that everything is built to a compromise and a price. Now, with the standard vehicle, you could jump in it and you could drive it all the way around Australia. But the moment that you want a little bit better handling, a little bit better load carrying, or if you bolt on protection like a bull bar, a winch, a tow bar, or a trailer, well that's outside the normal rounds of the vehicle. So then you have to set that vehicle up to suit your individual requirements.
Yep, great, okay, fine.
This is one of the little specialties that Ultimate Suspension offer their customers where they're driving in pretty adverse driving conditions or carrying extremely heavy loads. This is a rebound leaf. It's a single leaf installed on top of the main, not underneath, so it's not a load carrying leaf. It is there to protect the main and protect the spring pack and stop the axle from walking. We've used it in off-road racing, Parry-Dakar, Australian Safari, and we've had no spring failure. That's a very important point when you've got people travelling outback, carrying big loads and driving through adverse conditions. Who knows what's around the next corner? You could hit a washout that would normally snap a standard spring in half. With this, you'll drive through it. Okay, the first thing you've got to realise is that all suspensions aren't the same, and prices can vary quite dramatically. But the main thing is you need to work out what exactly you need and find someone that can provide that product. Now, if you go to a company and you say, okay, I want a suspension for my four-wheel drive because I'm going out back, they say, oh, heavy duty suspension, we've got just the one for you. If they've only got one kit to fit all vehicles, all that model vehicle, it's not going to work if your application is different to your friends. If you come in, you've got a bull bar and you've got a long-range fuel tank and a storage section in the back. It's a completely different requirement to someone without a bull bar, without a long-range tank, but is towing. So what you've got to have is a fully integrated system to suit your application. Now, just the same as one spring won't cover all applications, one shock absorber cannot cover all applications. So what you have to look at is first work out the weight, work out the driving conditions, suit that vehicle with its springs, and then match the springs with the shocks.
Excellent. Okay, now that makes a lot of sense.
And pricing. Well, if you're mass producing one style of spring and one valve setup shock, it's got to be a lot cheaper than going to the trouble of having a range of springs. Like with Ultimate Suspension, we offer 3 different springs for the front and up to 5 different springs for the rear. And to cover that range, we have 3 different style of shock absorbers. Now, if we just went to our cheapest pack and tried to sell that to everyone, we'd sell a lot more, but we wouldn't have as many happy customers out there because one does not fit all. Your first stage of suspension is your spring hanger. So it's very important to make sure that you maintain the correct angle and that your bushes are well maintained. If your bushes chop out, this pin comes down onto the main and causes damage. Besides giving a noise and an uncomfortable ride, it is important to make sure that you service and check your suspension regularly.
What would you say to somebody that's thinking about just getting something off the shelf and getting their local mechanic or their mate to fit it, compared to coming to a specialist?
The main difference between an ordinary auto shop and a suspension specialist is that the suspension specialist will ask you what you need and he'll work out a package to suit your requirement. So you're not just walking in, taking a kit that's marked for that particular vehicle, one that fits all. And you also run the risk buying on the internet, because quite often some of the sales could be products that are superseded, or products that are maybe rejected, and then quite often second hand there's damaged. Now, one thing we all have to keep in mind is a shock absorber. It doesn't matter whether it's a monotube gas, twin tube gas, straight hydraulic or a foam cell. They've all got oil inside it. And the same as oil in the engine, it needs to be changed after a certain period. So if you buy second-hand shock absorbers and second-hand springs, you're buying someone else's problems. Now, what you need to do is go in, see your suspension specialist, tell him what you've got on the vehicle, tell him what your requirements are, what your driving needs are, and he can sit down with you and work out a complete package, not just off the shelf, but a complete package, and fine-tune it to suit your individual requirements. In this application, you can see we have a very thick spring. The first stage is made up of a number of very thick leaves, and then we have a gap to our second stage. What this does, it allows free movement when the vehicle is not fully laden, yet when it's loaded up, the spring pack sits gently down onto the second stage and carries the additional load.
So Ken, the age-old problem or question for consumers is price versus quality, and how does that all pan out with suspension?
With suspension, it's very, very important. One of the biggest features is suspension is your main contact with the road. So for safety, comfort and performance, you must have a good, reliable suspension. And there's a very good old saying that quality is not expensive, it's priceless. But when you look around at what you can buy for what price, whether you want to settle for a cheaper system that's one system that fits all, or you want a system designed to meet your individual requirements, so you're going to get additional comfort, additional safety and performance. If your vehicle performs well, it handles well, much safer. So in general, most people come in to see us because they want a vehicle that will handle the off-road conditions and carry greater loads. They come back, they're quite surprised when they say it's more comfortable when it's empty. That's because the whole system is balanced, it's fine-tuned. Whereas another system will be set up as a heavy-duty system just to carry loads, and you'll suffer, you'll lose value in the unladen situation.
So Ken, with all the choices that people have, why the Ultimate Suspension? Why would they come here?
We offer our customers peace of mind and confidence in a product that's been designed and worked on for over 35 years. We have the quality, we have the warranty, we have the backup support and the after-sales service. The Ultimate Suspension is the best that money can buy.
So there you have it. Before heading out into the sunset, do yourself a huge favour. Go and see the boys at Ultimate Suspension. And I'm sure, like me, that you'll agree that it will be the best decision that you could possibly make if you're looking to have a successful four-wheel driving adventure.